Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you. My name is Roger Bisessa, and I'd like to welcome you to our program, Our Islam, Peace, Not Hostility. This is a program brought to you by the Ahmadiyya Anjuman Ishati Islam Incorporated of Trinidad and Tobago, an organization promoting a peaceful Islam, a tolerant Islam, an intelligent Islam. An organization promoting the pristine Islam as taught by the Holy Prophet Muhammad, upon whom be peace. This week we start a very special series based on a 3-day program we had a few weeks ago, where the Anjuman had a program on the topic Improving Family Life. For the next couple of weeks, we'll be coming from the various locations we were throughout Trinidad and Tobago with our specialist lecturers on different topics. Today's guest lecturer is Sister Nadia Ali-Shah, and she was speaking on the topic Experiences in Parenting.
A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. To our chairperson, my fellow speaker, respected elders or respected imams, brothers and sisters, all assalamu alaikum. Well, Uncle Zaid spoke about being an expert, and this evening I am dealing with experiences in parenting, and I'm certain for so many of you, haven't been for me being a parent for quite some time. I'm still not no expert at that. I'm learning as I go. Now, my dear brothers and sisters, parenting is a serious and a very real responsibility. It is a role that has a direct impact on the lives of another individual or individuals. This impact can be positive or it can be negative. I wish to give you a very simple definition of parenting. And parenting says the raising of children and all the responsibilities and activities that are involved in it. Being a parent, my dear brothers and sisters, can be seen as a 24/7 job, which has to be undertaken with a pleasant, patient, positive, and persevering attitude. When my children, my 3 girls, were a lot younger, people would always say to me, when your children are small, it's small problems, and when they get big, it's big problems. But as a mother of 3 young ladies, I must say that thus far it has been a wonderful experience. It has been a fulfilling experience for me, with some little bumps here and there. But I praise Almighty Allah for the children that I have, and I praise Almighty Allah for having my co-pilot, Andy Shah, to help me along the way. Being a parent means that we must adopt multiple roles. Roles such as a teacher, doctor, a chef, artist, counselor, mediator, and my dear brothers and sisters, the list can go on and on. We must realize that the home is the first teacher. As parents, what we instill and what we teach our children in the early years would no doubt pave the way to our children's ongoing development throughout their lives. Parenting entails ensuring that we nurture our children in a holistic manner, that is to say, spiritual, physical, intellectual, creative, and emotional. In my discourse this evening, there are so many different facets when it comes to parenting, but I have decided this evening that I'm going to touch basically on 2 aspects. Of course, as being Muslims, we know that our spiritual development is very important. And then I will be touching on the social aspects, because it is in my humble view that when we look at children's development throughout their lives and as individuals, if we do not have social skills and it's not well developed, sometimes we find that the other facets in our children's lives, may not fall in place as it should. Instilling spiritual and moral values in our children is a must. When we as parents practice performing our salah and reading of the Holy Qur'an, we demonstrate to our children the importance of these two. They will be able to see it as a routine and a regular practice. Sending our children to maktab would allow them to gain knowledge in Islam and in the way of life. I vividly remember our past Imam of the Gasparilla Jamaat, Imam Amrul, who would always say to me as a young mother to take my children to mosque. He would say to me, so what if they walk around? So what if they make some noise? If you keep them home, how would they know the masjid? And how would they know that the masjid is another home to them? The spiritual upbringing of our children would ensure that they get a right start in their lives. It would equip them with the tools they need to lead a life with moral values. These values, no doubt, would be etched and entwined in their very moral fabric and would be able to guide them in how they go about their daily life and guide them in their decision making. You know, sometimes we may feel that our children do not pay heed to us and to our lectures, as my daughters usually refer to whenever I have to speak to them. She's going to lecture again. But you know, they do listen, and believe me, they do pay heed to what we say. And being Muslims, my dear brothers and sisters, we must always take assurance when Almighty Allah tells us, remember me and I shall remember you. And I think as parents, you know, this is something that we should hold near and dear to us, because it is not easy being a parent. And particularly, you know, being an educator and being in the field of early childhood care and education, ECCE, it really is a different time that we are in altogether. I always speak to my colleagues and we say, you know, sometimes a different breed of children altogether, you know, and to particularly our young parents, you know, hold close to this, that, you know, when we remember Allah, He will remember us, and He certainly is going to help us along the way. He is certainly going to give us the patience and give us the understanding, you know, as we embark and as we continue along this road of parenting. When we look at what is taking place in our society today, the path that so many of our youth are taking, and as we interact with so many people of varied backgrounds, it seems that the lack or the absence of this spiritual facet is leading so many of our young children and our young people down the negative road of destruction. Children's first platform for socialization begins at home. They model themselves from what they observe their parents do, and they practice what we refer to as learned behavior. We must realize, my dear brothers and sisters, that social skills play a vital role in a child's development. Without social skills, the other domains in children's development can be hindered. And as an educator, and as I was speaking to our sister sitting there, as I was going through my discourse this afternoon, and you know, being an educator, it's something that, you know, we always tend to look at the various theories. And I sat down and I'm writing, and when I'm going through and I realized to myself, I was not lecturing to teachers. I have to think of my audience, and in my mind again, I'm going through so many theories. But for this evening, I have decided to, you know, draw reference to one particular theory, and that is Erik Erikson, psychosocial theory. Because as mentioned just now, I spoke about the social development of children. This theory, my dear brothers and sisters, very simply, it illustrates a framework of social development throughout the entire lifespan of an individual, from birth, you know, throughout their lives. It also emphasizes the social nature of human beings and the important influence that social relationships have on development. There are a few stages, so I will be speaking in terms of parenting for each of these stages and how these stages will be developed. The first stage of Erikson's theory with the psychosocial development occurs between birth and 1 year old. And this is the most fundamental stage in life. Again, as educators, we always speak about the formative years in a child's life, and the research speaks so much about this particular time. An infant is dependent on his or her parents for everything needed to survive, including food, love, warmth, safety, and nurturing. Once these are given to a child, he or she will feel a strong sense of safety and security and will no doubt develop trust. The theory states that if the parent or caregiver fails to provide adequate care and love, the child will come to feel that he or she cannot trust or depend upon adults in his or her life. The second stage of Erikson's theory takes place during the early childhood years between 2 and 3 years of age and is focused on children developing a greater sense of personal control. At this point in development, children are just starting to gain a little independence. They are starting to perform basic actions on their own and making simple decisions about what they prefer. By allowing children to make choices and gain control, parents and caregivers can help children develop a sense of autonomy or independence. When we allow our children to master simple life skills or self-help skills such as feeding themselves, cleaning up after themselves, packing up of toys after playing, this allows them to build their confidence. When this stage is not developed, children begin to feel a sense of shame in not being independent and carrying out simple tasks. And my dear brothers and sisters, it is something, again, for the young parents, because again, it's talking about experiences, and I am tapping into my own experiences with my daughters. Sometimes it used to be that I felt that they were a bit too independent because they wanted to do everything themselves. Being an educator now, we have children coming into our environment and they are not equipped in terms of their life, their self-help skills, because we now have children coming into us, they're unable to feed themselves, they're unable to help themselves with so many things. And many times throughout my interactions with young parents, one thing I have observed and one thing that has been common, the very first thing parents will say, "Miss, I don't have time. I don't have time." And I understand, I'm a working parent as well, and it's very difficult. As a parent, you are working all day, you have to get back home, perhaps pick up the child at the babysitter, or you come back home, you have to prepare dinner, you have to look after the children, and it is very difficult. And many times parents will say to me, "You know something, Miss, if I let him feed himself, it's going to be too messy for me to clean up after. How am I going to clean up after? I don't have the time." And it's now, the onus is now on the teachers to ensure that, we have to teach the child from scratch how to do these things. But, at the end of the day, as a parent, it is important that we know what we have to do. And at times it is very, very trying, but there is a solution. It's our children, and we have to make sure that we do what is required. So yes, sometimes we'll be tired, and yes, sometimes it's too many things to do, but if we want to ensure that our children, and particularly our small children, that they are equipped with these skills, we give them that time to flourish. We give them that time to explore, give them that time to develop these skills in them. The fourth stage in Erikson's theory, that is from the age of 6 to 11 years, the research tells us that through social interactions, children begin to develop a sense of pride in their accomplishments and abilities. Children who are encouraged and are commended by parents develop a feeling of competence and belief in their skills. Those who receive little or no encouragement from parents will doubt their abilities to be successful. Successfully finding a balance at this stage in this development leads to the strength known as competence, in which children develop a belief in their abilities to handle the tasks set before them. Now, this stage between 6 and 11, children are becoming more mature, and they will be exposed to so many different things. Again, through my interactions, a lot of times parents will say to me, Ms. Shah, I just don't have enough time during the day. Because by the time our children are now at the age of 11, all the additional lessons, all these things are happening, and sometimes we don't have the time to even take our children during the weekends to even socialize with any one of their peers or their cousins. You remember long ago how it used to be? When we were growing up, we would go and visit like on afternoons. We would spend time with our family. We would spend time with our grandparents. Weekends would come. We would go visit. Holiday time, we go. And now things are just so different. And really and truly, my dear brothers and sisters, when as parents we do not ensure that our children are socialized, this really sets them in a position where they are able to flourish and develop as they ought to. Something very simply, Andy was talking to me as we were coming up and so on, and he was speaking to me about technology. Now, I am certainly not bashing technology because we need this is the age that we are in, all right? We utilize our children, we encourage them from a very young age. We have the tabs, we have the laptops, and technology is something that's positive. But if it is not balanced, my dear brothers and sisters, we can find ourselves in a very ticklish situation whereby we are not allowing our children to build socially. Many times, and I see it in my own home too with my girls, we are all sitting in the living room and they're like this. And do you see that often in your home? Yeah. And sometimes I feel as though we are lacking that art of communicating, we are lacking that art of socializing, because you go out again and everybody just. And to me, my dear brothers and sisters, through my experiences, and even now, Andy and I, we really try to engage our children in conversation. It is something that we had always tried to as, they were growing up. And as difficult as it is becoming, we still try to, engage them in conversation and try to set up the forums whereby they can still be able to socialize with others. And again, I'm coming back to our mocked-up class, and I'm coming back, we are dealing with age of 6 to 11. The mocked-up class, parents, please, we need to make that effort to ensure that our children, are there, because they will be among their peers, they will be engaged in conversation and so on, that will bring out this socializing skill within them. Moving on to the 5th stage, this is the stage between 12 and 18 years. And we refer to it as the turbulent years, because we're looking now as for the teenagers, and praise be to Allah that so far I have survived it. This stage plays an essential role in developing a sense of personal identity, which will continue to influence the behavior and development in our children's life throughout. During adolescence, teens tend to explore their independence and develop a sense of self. Those who receive proper encouragement and reinforcement through personal exploration will emerge from this stage with a strong sense of self and feelings of independence and control. Now, if this stage, and if as parents, we don't fully support our children and help bring out this into our children, it brings about a feeling of insecurity and confusion in our children. As parents, we have to give them their space. And this is very important, my dear parents, giving your children their space. Sometimes we may feel that, you know, we are reaching out to them and they just want to be by themselves. I know sometimes to me, it used to worry me a lot because I would wonder, like, why they don't want to talk to me and, you know, all these things. But really and truly, they need their space. And we have to give them that space whereby they're able to reflect. Yes, as parents, you know, we want to find out what's happening with them and so on, but, you know, it is important that, you know, we allow them this time and we allow them to express themselves. We allow them to make decisions. Yes, they are still children. I still refer my girls, rough and suffer, you know, in their early 20s now, and I still refer to them as children. But we need to give them that space and let them express themselves. And really, you know, it is not easy. But how do we really give our children this space and give them all this control and so on? It is not easy. Because we know when we are at home with our children, they are a particular way. But again, when they are out there, and again, being a parent who has been out studying and whatnot, seeing what I had seen, sometimes it is very difficult to give your children space. But as a parent, we need to listen to them and we need to have trust. We need to trust our children. And this can be achieved when we build a relationship with them as a parent. When we are able to build a relationship with our children, everything else falls into place. Now, another stage in Erickson's theory, that's from the age of 19 onwards. At this stage, he tells us that our children are now focused in terms of building their lives, focusing on their career, and perhaps starting a family. And it is said that those who are successful during this phase, they feel that they are able to make a positive contribution to society. And if this is not properly developed in individuals, they may tend to feel very unproductive and so on. And, you know, I have to say, you know, as in Trinidad and Tobago, although our family life and the family unit, it is changing drastically, we are still very much, I would say we are quite fortunate in the sense that we are still able to be there for our children. They still come to us for advice, even though they're going through now young adulthood. We are still able to have some sort of input into their lives. And really and truly, I would say again through my interactions, having that family unit and the experienced members in our family being there for our young adults, it really, really makes such a big difference, because now they are able now to get that added support from their parents, from their grandparents, etc. And it makes life a lot easier in terms of having to deal with so many things. You know, again, looking at the structure of the family. What we see happening these days now, when we were growing up, was these certain things prevalent in our times. We've always had a family. The family unit was always one whereby we had the extended family and we had the grandparents. I know with us growing up, even with my children, Andy and I lived with mom and dad for so many years before we went on our own. And mom and dad played such a pivotal role in my children's life, in my life as well, and Andy's, because they were there. They were there to help us along the way. Being a parent, and particularly being a new parent, it doesn't come with a manual. You learn as you go. And it was so reassuring to know that we had mom and dad, and mom in particular, who would give advice. I'm seeing Auntie Zaida and Uncle Patrick here, and they were the grandparents too, because they always guided us. And even though we were young adults, and sometimes our young adults, they feel as though I know everything, it was very reassuring for me to have that guidance from these people, you know, who I always and still look up to. But not as I said, we are looking now and the family, the structure seems to be changing. And for our young parents, they don't have that support. They are living on their own. Sometimes they rely on babysitters, and they don't just have that support. And you know, what about our single parents at this point in time? It's something that I go through every day. You want to help. They're trying, you know, they are really, really trying, but it is so limited. They do not have that support, and it makes it even more difficult for them, you know. So parenting, my dear brothers and sisters, it really, it entails so much. It really entails so much. And it is important for us as parents that we create that support for our children, that we ensure that we provide that scaffolding for them throughout the various stages in their lives, to reassure them and to let them know that you are loved and we are here to support you. We have to realize, my dear brothers and sisters, as parents, we really impact on their lives. And with this in mind, we have to pay more attention to what we do, how we carry about ourselves, what we say. All these things will have an impact on our children. You know, a very simple thing I usually tell parents sometimes there might be a change they might have a change in their job, or they may have a change in their working time, and we don't realize that these simple little things could affect a child, because daddy's coming home late all the time. Daddy will take the child to the park, and now daddy's working late. Daddy can't take the child to the park, and you will find that we have so many behavioral issues coming up, and it is so much. So as parents, you know, we ensure that we are there for our children, and we always support them. And I really want to compliment the Anjuman in that for, you know, quite some time we're looking to see how best are we able to support our membership and, you know, in connection our communities. And really having a forum like this, we are able now to provide support. We are able to help our as individuals and as parents and so on. So my dear brothers and sisters, and to my fellow parents, let us continue being that beacon to our children. Let us continue to support them, you know, and always, as I said, let's keep Allah in our hearts so that we will get that fuel to move forward. So on ending, I just want to share just a little poem that I came across, and it's by Diana Lomans. If I had my child to raise all over again, I'd finger paint more and point the finger less. I'll do less correcting and more connecting. I'd take my eyes off my watch and watch with my eyes. I would care to know less and know to care more. I'd take more hikes and fly more kites. I'd stop playing serious and seriously play. I'd run through the more fields and gaze at more stars. I'd do more hugging and less tugging. I would be firm less often and affirm much more. I'd build the self-esteem first and the house later. I'd teach less about the love of power and more about the power of love. My dear brothers and sisters, I thank you all so much, and Assalamu alaikum.